It is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. War should be the only study of a prince. He should consider peace only as a breathing time, which gives him leisure to contrive, and furnishes as ability to execute military plans. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. Hatred is gained as much by good works as by evil. Men seldom rise from low condition to high rank without employing either force or fraud, unless that rank should be attained either by gift or inheritance. The more sand has escaped from the hourglass of our life, the clearer we should see through it. Hence it comes about that all armed prophets have been victorious, and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. A prince never lacks legitimate reasons to break his promise. Before all else, be armed. Tardiness often robs us opportunity, and the dispatch of our forces. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. A son can bear with equanimity the loss of his father, but the loss of his inheritance may drive him to despair. Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others. Whoever conquers a free town and does not demolish it commits a great error and may expect to be ruined himself. Politics have no relation to morals. A wise man will see to it that his acts always seem voluntary and not done by compulsion, however much he may be compelled by necessity. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. To understand the nature of the people one must be a prince, and to understand the nature of the prince, one must be of the people. States that rise quickly, just as all the other things of nature that are born and grow rapidly, cannot have roots and ramifications. The first bad weather kills them. Since it is difficult to join them together, it is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking. War is just when it is necessary. Arms are permissible when there is no hope except in arms. With regard to prudence and stability, I say a people is more prudent, more stable and more just than a prince. One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. I consider it a mark of great prudence in a man to abstain from threats or any contemptuous expressions, for neither of these weaken the enemy, but threats make him more cautious, and the other excites his hatred, and the desire to revenge himself. The one who adapts his policy to the times prospers, and likewise that the one whose policy clashes with the demands of the times does not. Severities should be dealt out all at once, so that their suddenness may give less offense. Benefits ought to be handed out drop by drop, so that they may be relished the more. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests. Men shrink less from offending one who inspires love than one who inspires fear. Nature that framed us of 4 elements, warring within our breasts for regiment, doth teach us all to have aspiring minds. One change always leaves the way open for the establishment of others. The main foundations of every state, new states as well as ancient or composite ones, are good laws and good arms. You cannot have good laws without good arms, and where there are good arms, good laws inevitably follow. I hope, and hoping feeds my pain. I weep, and weeping feeds my failing heart. I laugh, but the laughter does not pass within. I burn, but the burning makes no mark outside. God is not willing to do everything, and thus take away our free will and that share of glory which belongs to us. There is no surer sign of decay in a country than to see the rights of religion held in contempt. Of mankind we may say in general they are fickle, hypocritical, and greedy of gain. There is no avoiding war, it can only be postponed to the advantage of others. Benefits should be conferred gradually, and in that way they will taste better. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success, than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed, for if you merely offend them they take vengeance, but if you injure them greatly they are unable to retaliate, so that the injury done to a man ought to be such that vengeance cannot be feared. No enterprise is more likely to succeed than one concealed from the enemy until it is ripe for execution. A return to first principles in a republic is sometimes caused by the simple virtues of one man. His good example has such an influence that the good men strive to imitate him, and the wicked are ashamed to lead a life so contrary to his example. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Because just as good morals, if they are to be maintained, have need of the laws, so the laws, if they are to be observed, have need of good morals. The fact is that a man who wants to act virtuously in every way necessarily comes to grief among so many who are not virtuous. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. When you disarm the people, you commence to offend them and show that you distrust them either through cowardice or lack of confidence, and both of these opinions generate hatred. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. It is much more secure to be feared than to be loved. Men are so simple and yield so readily to the desires of the moment that he who will trick will always find another who will suffer to be tricked. We cannot attribute to fortune or virtue that which is achieved without either. For among other evils caused by being disarmed, it renders you contemptible, which is one of those disgraceful things which a prince must guard against. The new ruler must determine all the injuries that he will need to inflict. He must inflict them once and for all. The distinction between children and adults, while probably useful for some purposes, is at bottom a specious one, I feel. There are only individual egos, crazy for love. Men are more apt to be mistaken in their generalizations than in their particular observations. It should be noted that when he seizes a state, the new ruler ought to determine all the injuries that he will need to inflict. He should inflict them once and for all, and not have to renew them every day. Princes and governments are far more dangerous than other elements within society. Niccolo Machiavelli.